All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Saturday, March 8th, right here on your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns on All In Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson. That is Jake Jimerson. And today is all NFL draft talk. We are going to go through our top 10 tight ends in the 2025 class, and we are going to rank them and give them a little bit of a draft grade, and we will probably have to go over these. I've already made changes to my linebacking group. I have Jay Higgins. After further review, I think he was number 10 on my list. I think I've moved him all the way up maybe 4 or 5 spots since then. And I think he's sitting at my number 4 spot, to be completely honest with you. So these picks that we are putting out on air right now are subject to change by the time the NFL draft happens, just like what Mel Kiper does, just like what Todd McShay does, just like what all the big guys do. Their big boards are constantly shifting and changing after further review and combine looks and pro day looks and measurables and all the things, and medicals come out, and all those sorts of things play a factor. But Jake and I, watching the tape, putting eyes to the tape, and I really enjoyed watching this tight end group. I really think there are some intriguing guys to look at, Jake. There are some guys that you kind of have a for certain feel of their success, what's going to happen in the NFL. But there's a lot of unknowns with a lot of these guys. A lot of skinny guys, a lot of what looks like a wide receiver playing tight end. Are they going to have to put on a lot of weight to have success? Are they even going to play tight end primarily in the NFL? How does that translate from kind of a shift in this new age tight end era of your Gronkowskis and Kelce's, George Kittles, and now you're starting to get these Kyle Pittses coming into the league way more often. They're kind of a new age, slimmer build, less blocking type guy. And so it'll be very interesting. What works best, what doesn't work best. I think the old school guys still have a spot in the league with just having really good blocking ability, and receiving is a secondary trait to some of these tight ends. And so without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump right into this thing. Jake, what is your initial take on this overall class, though, before we jump in?
Yeah. First off, hand up, I did not get in as near much film as I should have. Work related.
Yours is going to be based off college football rankings, correct?
No, not quite that. I considered it, but no, not quite that. I still did get to watch a little film. I will be catching up on it. I'm going to go back through this weekend. I should have some time, go back through, get my tight ends more ranked. It'll switch a lot from what I have right now, quite frankly. But I did start to at least get a feel for the class and just kind of throw down a 10 to start with as a foundation. And then I'm going to move from there. May even move some guys out, some other guys in. I have a lot more film to watch on the tight end group. But for me, there's 6. My top 6, I feel like is pretty cemented. I think there's a clear top 6.
Now,
how you want to order those?
Yeah.
How you want to order those within that 6, I think can vary drastically.
Jake, I think I'm actually with you on the 6. I'll be honest with you.
But I think I literally on my little just notes page I have going with it, I have like spaces in between 6 and 7. So I remember to talk about that after 6. I think there's a pretty big drop off. And that doesn't mean there's guys who can't be good, but that's where, to me, big unknowns start to come into play. Whereas the top 6, I think, all have a fairly decent chance to be successful at the next level. I think once you drop down to that 7 to 10, and then obviously on spot, it's more of a coin flip or less. But that top 6 is very clear, and I think a very fruitful amount of depth between that top 6 of if you draft one of those guys, you're going to get a guy who can probably contribute pretty quickly, if not right away.
And here's the crazy thing about the draft, though, is you can have really top heavy quarterback classes. 1 or 2 of those guys are not going to succeed. A Mac Jones isn't going to necessarily have a great career. You have your top 4 guys. Which ones are going to translate the best into the NFL? I feel the same way about this tight end group, is that we might have 6 really good prospects that can have all capable of having good pro careers. Which ones figure it out the soonest and make their stamp and put their mark on the league, and where others might falter and they might be, a rookie contract and done guy, or they might be, third string for the rest of their career and kind of a travel guy around the league. And we're like, man, remember whenever, we thought he was a second round grade and he had all the talent in the world coming out of such and such. But yeah, that's just how the draft works. That works like that at every position, every year. You're never going to get it perfect. And so without further ado, let's go ahead. I will start this thing off, Jake, with my top 5 guys. I'll just run down the list. I'll say a little something about each one of them, and then I'll let you go. But I think the consensus number 1 overall tight end in this year's class is Penn State's Tyler Warren, 6'6", 261. He's the best player that I've scouted this year so far. The dude, he's really fun to watch. I love his mentality. Got to give James Franklin credit. Used him in just about every position on the football field. Put him out wide at wideout. Put him at tight end. Put him at fullback. Put him at running back. Lined him at quarterback sometimes. He threw a touchdown pass this last season at the tight end position. Also not the only one who did throw a touchdown pass this year out of the tight end position, but definitely my favorite player in this year's draft so far. Not sure what he doesn't do well. He's extremely athletic for his size. He's got the build. He's got the frame. He's got all the tools that you need. Runs crisp routes, soft hands. He can lead block. He's a downhill blocker, physical specimen. And so he does a lot of good things really, really well. 5th-year senior at Penn State, was the John Mackey Award winner. Everything that Tyler Warren can do on the football field in the college game will and should translate very well to the NFL game. Everyone's kind of asking, is there a Brock Bowers 2.0? In my opinion, Tyler Warren may not be the receiving threat that Brock Bowers is, but he is a caliber of player that day one will make your offense a better team without a doubt, in my opinion. I've got a top 10 draft grade on him. I think I've got an 8.5 out of 10. I think he could easily be a top 10 draft pick. I don't think he will get drafted in the top 10. I think he is a top 10 player in this year's draft. Does that mean he gets drafted at number 20? Possibly. He's a first rounder for sure. He won't escape the first round, but I do have a top 10 grade on Tyler Warren. My number 2 tight end. Love this guy out of Bowling Green, Harold Fannin Jr., 6'4", 230, a little bit undersized, but he is the best athlete maybe that I've watched in this year's class so far. And I'm talking running backs, talking the linebackers. As a tight end, this dude is a electric playmaking freak. Love everything that he does. Does it translate to the NFL game? I don't know. We've seen athletic, fast, smaller size tight ends not really pan out. They're kind of in-betweeners in the NFL game. And does that translate? I don't know. But I love the guy anyway. I'm going to be rooting for him. I can only watch what I saw on tape. And what I saw on tape against Texas A&M and against Penn State was dominant. Had about 7 catches, nearly 100 yards in both of those games, scored a touchdown in both of those games. So, yeah, the dude can do it against better opponents than just the MAC. But I do wonder if his size hinders him at the next level. Might take him a year or two to kind of get acclimated to the strength and to get his weight and to get his strength up to snuff. And his blocking. Obviously, when you get a guy as electric and athletic and as much of a receiving tight end as him, you always have questions about, can he hold up in the run or in the blocking game? He does show the willingness to do it. They use him as a blocker at Bowling Green, and he's actually fairly good at it. Again, it's a little bit different trying to block the edge on Myles Garrett than it is somebody who is at Ball State. Just a slight difference. So can that hold up? My number 3 tight end, Elijah Arroyo out of Miami. This guy I've got, for Harold Fannin Jr., I also have a first-round grade on him. I gave him a 7 out of 10. I don't think he goes in the first round. I don't think 2 tight ends go in the first round, but that doesn't mean I don't give him a first-round grade. I think he'll probably get drafted somewhere in the second round, but he is a first-round talent, Harold Fannin Jr. Number 3, Elijah Arroyo, having the frame and skill set that he has in the system that he played at Miami, I was surprisingly shocked at how good of a blocker this guy is. He looks like he's just that slender receiving threat, can play in the slot, can play outside. He actually is a very willing blocker and not terrible at it. Now, he does, with his size, where he is 6'4", 245. He does get pushed back a little bit, and especially if he has to hold his ground a little bit. But if it's just a chip block or if it's contact, he'll make the contact. He'll move some guys, and he's not terrible at it. Willing to, if he is capable of putting on more weight and building his size, I actually see him being a very good player at the NFL level. He's a deep route guy, seam route king at Miami, and he's a big play threat. Have a second round grade on him, 6.6 out of 10. And for my number 4 tight end, the guy we've all been waiting for, out of the University of Texas, Gunnar Helm, at 6'5", 250. I've got a third round grade at 6.3 out of 10. And I think he is one of your more all around solid tight ends in this year's class. He may not jump off the screen with explosiveness. He's not going to make highlight reel plays unless he's hurdling guys, but he does everything well. And I think he does everything well, just about as better than anybody else in his position in this year's draft, with the exception of Tyler Warren. He does create separation, very diverse route tree, consistent on uncontested catches. Jake, did you know, I looked this up for him. He has only not, out of all the passes that he was the intended target, he didn't come down with 17 of them for his entire Texas career. And I think it was like something like, I want to say it was like 98 attempts thrown towards him, and he came down with like 78 of them or something like that. Like a very high catch rate is what I'm trying to get at with Gunnar Helm. And so, I really like what he does. Like I said, I got a third round grade on him. If he got taken in the second, I wouldn't be surprised. To me, when he runs his routes, he's not fast. He's not going to outspeed you or anything, but man, I see a lot of Jason Witten in terms of the route running ability. And if you can do that and you can be kind of a slower, not as agile player, and block as well as Gunnar Helm can, but you can still get open and have a good route tree, you're going to find your place for quite a while in this league. And so, yeah, there are my top 5 guys. Was that 5 or was that 4? I think that's 4. Real quickly, Mason Taylor out of LSU is my number 5 guy, 6'5", 255. I've got a 6.25 out of 10, third round grade, just below Gunnar Helm. I think he does a lot of things like Gunnar Helm. He doesn't put up the production in the receiving game. You know, he's primarily a blocker. And I think for Ellis, I will say this much about him. He had a better receiving year with Jaden Daniels than he did with Garrett Nussmeier. Maybe that has something to do with the talent of quarterback. Probably has a lot to do with it. But he had a better freshman year or sophomore year than he did this last season with Garrett Nussmeier. But just statistically was better. But he does a lot of good things well. But he kind of can get lost on tape sometimes. From time to time, I just forget that he's even out there playing or doing anything. But also, caveat to this as well, every single one of these tight ends didn't just play at the tight end position. They played in the slot. They played him outside. They moved him all around the field. That goes for every single guy on this list.
Yeah. One thing before I start on mine is one thing that really stood out to me in the little bit of film that I've watched so far is how great a lot of college schemes are at scheming tight ends. And it does make it tough to project them to the NFL in some ways. Gunnar Helm was one that I found watching. I was go, man, he's really good on film. Sarkisian is also really good at play design and really good at scheming him open, because there's some times where he's just wide ass open and it's scheme. And so there were catches, but that contested catch rate that you brought up, that's what stood out to me with Helm on film, was contested, and you'll see why here soon. But Tyler Warren, I mean, I don't think there's any arguments that could be made against him being number 1. I think he's the best player in the draft so far that I've looked at. I don't think it's particularly close either. I think he's about as surefire as it comes. I felt the same way about Brock Bowers. Tight end, the top end of the tight end discussion. I feel like we have both in our own private discussions over the years been pretty spot on. I mean, we were both not very high on Kyle Pitts.
Nope, did not
the
like
only
Kyle
people
Pitts.
who did not like Kyle Pitts, and also thought that, just because Kyle Pitts wasn't good, the idea that you don't draft Brock Bowers top 10 was crazy. Boy, did that age very well. But yeah, I mean, Tyler Warren is a Brock Bowers type prospect for me. He does everything well. There's nothing he does that's not at a high level. Quite frankly, I think your 8.5 out of 10 is low. I haven't signed draft grades yet. I don't feel like putting that next to it would be correct of me. I don't feel like I have evaluated enough.
Yeah.
But I can tell you he's going to be 9.25 out of 10 for me. That one will be easy for me to do. Because I think he could be a Pro Bowl player next year.
Yeah, he very well could be.
And I could see him just doing that his whole career. I think wherever he goes, he's going to succeed more than likely. Because someone's going to be putting a pretty good investment into him wherever he does get taken in the first round. My second, also Harold Fannin Jr. Didn't think I was going to like him because of the frame.
Yeah.
I went into his film because I saw that he was high on a lot of people.
I watched an 11.5-minute just highlight reel, not just film. I watched the game film so I can see how they block and stuff, but 11.5 minutes of 2024 highlights.
Yeah. And his willingness as a blocker, even though he's a little, because you can build on strength, you can build on your frame a little bit. It's hard to build just a ton of athleticism, which he comes ready-made, straight out of package, ready to go. He has every bit of athletic ability for the NFL. I do think he's going to have to bulk up a little bit just so he can fight in the trenches some. But I mean, it's not like George Kittle's some gigantic human.
Right.
And he's the best blocking tight end in the NFL, one of the best blocking tight ends I've ever seen in the NFL. And I think Harold Fannin Jr. can be a George Kittle type player in the NFL. Maybe a little bit better or more dynamic on the receiving end, a little less dynamic on the blocking end. But I think he can have that type of effect on a team. But I also think he has a pretty low floor as well, but an extremely high ceiling. Gunnar Helm, I have at 3. Kind of all the things you said. I think he's, other than Tyler Warren, the best all-around tight end. And I do still think being a all-around good player at tight end is better than just being an athletic freak.
Yep.
Which tells you how much I think of Howard Fannin Jr. because he's not just an athletic freak. He does have the blocking side to go with it. I think just Gunnar Helm does everything well. As long as he goes to the right place that will know how to use his skill set. I have a hard time seeing him not just having a successful NFL career. Maybe not great, not all pro type player, but a very, very good career. I think the Jason Witten comparison was pretty solid. Maybe not to that extreme.
I don't think he's going to be a Hall of Fame tight end. Now, he could be, but the skill set is there.
The skill set is similar. It's a good comparison. I have Colston Loveland at 4. I think Michigan being Michigan this year held him back.
Yeah. I might want to reevaluate my consensus on him.
I think not having him in the top 5 is, I get why, but sometimes you lose sight of a player because of a team's incompetence on a certain side of the ball.
It's so bad.
Michigan's offense was horrible this year. Dude, so I actually went back and watched some of his film the year before.
Okay, yeah. I probably need to do that with JJ McCarthy, to be honest with you, as his quarterback.
Yeah, and I mean, last year I almost throw it away. I don't really care that his production wasn't that great because what tight end, you put Brock Bowers on that team, he doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, what tight end was in his position. They would have all had the same production or worse. So yeah, I think he's also an all-around tight end. He can block, he can receive. Really, I have him basically tied with Gunnar Helm. I just put bias in for Gunnar Helm over him.
Why wouldn't you? This is a Longhorn podcast.
But I do think he's just another player who a little bit higher of a floor, maybe a little bit lower of a ceiling than a Harold Fannin Jr., or even Elijah Arroyo, who's next on my list. But I like rising that floor up a little bit while still having a good ceiling. Because to me, completely busting, when you're drafting in the first 3 rounds is detrimental to your team's growth and ability to win championships. Elijah Arroyo next. I need to watch more film on him. He's one of those guys who could end up moving up for me. But
here's what I'll tell you right now in terms of watching his blocking. Watch the Louisville game. The Miami Louisville game probably showcases his blocking the best, if that's kind of what you're concerned about. And that's the only reason really why it bumped him up a little bit higher, because I was like, I just don't know if this guy can get on the line of scrimmage and on a 3rd and 2, whenever you need a heavy package in, are you going to put him in out there, and then I watched the Louisville game. I was like, well, if you put on maybe 10, 15 pounds of muscle, you might be able to, so.
What hurt him for me, and he's still 5, but why I say he could go up, he could drop. From the film I watched, don't love the route running, and I don't love the blocking. And so that's 2 pretty important things.
Yeah, for a tight end.
And 2 things that can improve, but those are big detriments to have. Yeah. And that's my 5. I almost went 6 because again, I have my top 6 and I have a big space.
No, that's fine. And so my number 6 is Colston Loveland out of Michigan. And again, I want to preface this. First off, this is the note that I have. I want to read it word for word for everybody. First off, Michigan was maybe the worst offense I've ever had the displeasure of watching. I'm not sure it's fair to base his production based on their offense. With that said, his frame and size is slightly concerning to me. He struggles with bull rush, pass rush in pass pro, and is inconsistent at best at the run blocking department, good and bad moments when it comes to blocking. Now, his skill set and frame favors him in the receiving game, where he's more athletic than linebackers, creates mismatches, can play in the slot, a little even better outside as well, does play the ball in the air very well, and very good hands in traffic, very tight spaces for a tight end. You're always going to be in the middle of the field getting hit, tight windows to catch the ball in. He does a very good job of that. So again, maybe I need to watch more JJ McCarthy as his quarterback film than I do this last season. So I did preface that in my notes of
I hadn't even read that whenever I said that as well.
It was awful watching Michigan. I didn't even have fun watching his film, to be honest with you. Next, for number 7, I've got Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon, 6'5", 255. I've got a 4th round grade on the Oregon tight end. Want to also say this: number 3 might be the worst tight end number ever worn. Red flags all over the place for a tight end wearing number 3. But he is a player that comes up with big plays when Oregon needed him to. Almost every 3rd down, whether it be 3rd and 10, 3rd and 3, he was right there making a play. And I love a tight end who comes up clutch to move the chains. Maybe that's just because I grew up with Jason Witten, and that was kind of his, stamp on his game, was coming up with a big play when you needed him most. So I did notice that out of him. I do like that. He's great run after the catch. That's kind of his best part about his game, is once he gets it in his hands, he's liable to go 60 yards. I mean, he's an athletic guy, got a big body, not a great blocker. Didn't love his blocking, but it's Oregon at the same time. I mean, they had him almost playing wide receiver more than they had him playing at tight end. But with that said, I'm not sure the Oregon style of offense translates well for tight ends to the NFL. That was really my biggest knock against him. One guy that is going to be rated low, I think, on a lot of people's lists just because of the school that he went to. Put up huge production his senior year was Arondi Gadsden from Syracuse, tight end. He's my number 8. Tight end, 6'5", 236. Jake, very skinny build. He is
I've been disconnected for like 30 seconds. I think my internet went kaputs.
Well, you're back. I have Arondo Gadsden out of Syracuse, 6'5", 236. Very skinny guy, almost could play wide receiver. I think that's going to be his downfall. Can you put on the weight? Because I don't think those tweeners really work in the NFL. You've got to pick wide receiver. You got to be fast enough to play wide receiver, or you got to be big enough to play tight end. It's going to be one or the other. And I think that's going to be his biggest fall if he can't put on the weight and build his frame up. He's 6'5". He's got the size, the height needed, but he does find himself in between. Very lean frame, can stretch the field vertically. Feel as though linebackers will be able to overpower him over the middle of the field. And I don't know if he'll be able to get separation away from safeties. But the Syracuse tight end is another one of those guys that I mentioned before we started this list, Jake. What's he going to like? It's kind of a toss up. I've got a 4th round grade on him because I'm willing to take a chance on a guy like that in the 4th round. And I don't think you're going to be able to get him anywhere past the 4th round because I think teams are going to be feeling that same way of, okay, he doesn't necessarily have the body for the NFL, but if we get him to have the body and he can continue to keep all the skill sets that he possesses now with his lean frame, he's going to be quite the weapon because he's got great hands. I don't think I saw him drop a single pass that came his way. It felt like he brought in every single pass that was thrown to him. Number 9, I've got Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame, 6'5". It's really just because he's a Notre Dame tight end. I watched his film. He's on a rotation with about 3 other tight ends. Doesn't play a lot of minutes, but it kind of does all the things right for a tight end. Over the middle, strong body, good hands, average blocker, but really disappears on film. Can go, 2-3 quarters without ever seeing his number really make a big play on the field by any means. So got a 5th round grade on him, 5.5 out of 10 grade. And then lastly, a project player, Jake. This is a guy who may have a very, secretly, backup tight end type of career. The guy I kind of compared him to the most was Taysom Hill in New Orleans. He's a 6'4", 265-pound tight end out of Texas Tech, Jalen Conyers. And he was rated as, I think, the 24th. He was ranked top 20 in tight ends in the country in terms of his graded season. And Tech used him a lot like Penn State used Tyler Warren all around the field, whether that be in the backfield at running back, at fullback, over at wide receiver, out wide, lined up at the tight end position. He lined up at quarterback multiple times in a wildcat formation, threw a touchdown pass. He's extremely athletic, except he's a little short. He's 6'4", and he's also a little bit too stocky, too heavy to kind of be, considered a lean kind of speed guy. And so not really the fastest guy, not really the tallest guy. But he's got a skill set and he's got great hands and can catch in traffic. I've got anywhere past the 5th round. I'd be happy to draft this guy. 5.4 out of 10 on his draft grade. Again, a lot of it's measurables. That's the issue is can he get open? But here's a player I kind of compared him to. Not only could he maybe fill in for a Taysom Hill in New Orleans, Delaney Walker. Do you remember him out of San Francisco and Tennessee? Kind of played fullback, kind of played tight end, kind of did a little bit of both, was really good in the red zone threat. If Jalen Conyers can make that his career, I think it's set up beautifully for him to have a pretty successful stint wherever he ends up. Could be 2 or 3 teams by the time it's all said and done.
Yeah, that's a player that I need to watch film on. He's one that I didn't get to.
Yeah, please do, because he's pretty low on a lot of tight end lists. And I just was like, who's some guys? And I was kind of looking at grades and I was like, why is this guy near the bottom of the tight end list? And yet his PFF grade is top 25 in the entire country. Mm-hmm. And so I watched him and I could see why his grades were high, is because he just did a little bit of everything. Played quarterback, played running back, was all over the field for Texas Tech.
Yeah, definitely one I'm going to watch. I actually have one on my list that not on yours.
All right.
And not on a lot of people's top 10. I don't think he really is on anyone's top 10, but I like him.
I like it.
So at 6, I have Mason Taylor out of LSU. I'm not going to rehash much. I think you did a pretty good job of breaking it down, better than I'm going to do with the limited film I've watched so far. Terrence Ferguson at 7. Kind of a lot of things you said. He came in clutch a lot for Oregon. Another guy I think who benefited from scheme a lot. I worry about his ability as a blocker at the next level. I worry about how exactly he'll fit in on a team, but there's room there to be a good NFL player. Mitchell Evans out of Notre Dame at 8. Kind of like you said, just moments of like, wow, this guy looks like an NFL tight end, and then moments of where is he?
Yeah, completely lost him on the field. I was like, oh, is he not even out there? Because then
now,
I
is
realized,
that because Notre Dame runs a weird offense? Maybe partly, and that's why
Riley Leonard did not help. Very similar to Colton Loveland.
Not a great passing quarterback overall, and so that's kind of why I have him as high as I have him. He's one that I could see end up dropping. I don't think he'll rise. He'll either stay put or drop for me. And then this is the one my little project
Okay.
of the tight end group is Luke Lackey out of
Okay.
Iowa.
At Iowa.
First off, tight end you. Iowa is tight end you.
DJ
And
Hawkinson, George Kittle. Yeah.
a lot of people aren't extremely high on him just because a little projecty, but I think he's a little bit less of a project than a lot of people think. He's also son of former NFL All-Pro Jim Lackey, and he's an Iowa tight end. He's a little bit good at everything. I think he's capable. He's really good at catching the ball in traffic. He's really good at finding holes in the zone. I ended up watching more film of him than maybe any other prospect
Really?
during my little bit of time watching, because I started watching. I was like, what do you not like about this guy? And I think it's because he doesn't blow you away with athleticism. He doesn't blow you away with getting past defenders, but again, he plays on Iowa. Talk about being hampered by an offense. Trust me, I'm their coach on NCAA in our dynasty mode, and it is not fun playing offense with that team.
No, need a quarterback.
His route tree could get a little better. Again, Iowa. There's things to grow on, but I think he's a pretty all around tight end. And at some point, when a school just keeps putting out good players from a position, I buy into it.
I agree. I am 100% on that same train as you.
Yeah, and he did get hurt in 23. I did see that. And so, durability concerns, because his production really comes in recent memory, not so much start of his career.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a lot to build off there. And I think he's a guy at the right place that could end up being really effective, and maybe a little earlier on than a lot of other people are thinking. And then I do have Gadsden from Syracuse at 10. I don't like this. I like a tight end that can block.
Yeah.
At least somewhat.
I'm not sure if he was even on the line at any point in Syracuse blocking.
And I don't like that style of tight end. But I get, watching his film, I just objectively, I get why. So a lot of people have him higher. So I felt like, okay, well, he probably needs to be in my top 10, at least with being limited in what I've watched so far.
Right. And once you're able to watch more film, feel free to drop Jake. This is your top 10. This isn't anybody else's top 10.
Yeah. Before the draft, I'm going to refresh my, I reserve the right to just
absolutely
quickly list my top 10 of tight ends when I've watched a little bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't love his projection into the NFL for me.
Yeah.
I have him at 10 right now because I've been limited. You talked me into the tech guy. I haven't watched an ounce of film. He might be in over this guy.
He's kind of a pet cat for me. I don't think his body structure is conductive for the NFL in terms of, I think he can take a hit, and he's stocky. He's a big guy, but I think I don't know if his measurables are exactly what you want out of a tight end.
I do care about measurables as a tight end.
As a tight end, and I can see his shortcomings being exactly that, or just shortcomings of his full potential of being good. He's a hell of an athlete. He's the off-brand Tyler Warren. He's got the exact same skill set. Texas Tech almost used him identically as Tyler Warren was used at Penn State, except he's not a 6'6", 275-pound beast.
Yeah. What scares me about Gadsden is if Kyle Pitts can't succeed in the NFL, what about Gadsden is going to?
It would be. It's almost a worse version of Kyle Pitts if you think about it.
Yeah, much worse version, just from an athletic and point of view. And so I won't be surprised if he drops out of my top 10. I'm going to watch more film on him first.
Yeah.
But not in love with him so far.
And he is one of those like really fun college players that put up big numbers and had big plays, was an electric playmaker in college.
But tight end's so different.
It's a completely different game from college to NFL. It really is.
I think tight end is one of the most unique positions to the way I go about looking at tight ends and how I think they're going to translate to the NFL.
And everybody has their preference on tight end. Jake, you and I are not big fans of this new age tight end, of a smaller, leaner guy.
Which ones have had a ton of success that just can't block?
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. I like, as much as I hate to say it, a Dallas Goedert is a perfect example. Big body, can block you out, and
I would have rather you just said Jake Ferguson. We have one in Dallas that you can use.
Jake Ferguson, then fine, whatever,
Or George Kittle, or just not an Eagle. Shame on you.
McBride in Arizona is a great example. He had a really good year this year, but big body frame guy who looks like he's a power forward in basketball, can box you out, and
TJ Hawkinson
can run really good routes and has really good hands, and has that mental psychopath ability to say, I'm an offensive lineman at the same time because I'm about to run you over.
Those are all the best tight ends in the NFL. All this talk about this new age of tight ends and what they're doing. The new age of tight ends is, yes, more athletic guys, but still guys that aren't mentally right in the head. There's a screw loose. There's a little bit of offensive lineman in them. Brock Bowers, he has that.
TJ Hawkinson has it. George
Trey
Kittle
McBride out of Arizona, another good one.
Yep.
Sam Laporta.
Sam Laporta, Iowa guy. Yep.
Yeah. Mark Andrews, still one of the top tight ends when he's not dropping the ball in an important playoff game.
Poor guy. Jake Ferguson has a couple screws loose.
Oh yeah, and I love it.
Yeah.
Jake Ferguson is one of my favorite players on the Dallas Cowboys. He shows up every week with the same mentality and same attitude.
But you can't. It's not a pretty boy position. It's not a glorious position to play. You're half offensive line, half receiver, and you just have to have something a little. Gronkowski, he's got a lot of screws loose. The dude,
he might not have any screws in.
All his screws are on the ground, all of them. So it takes a little something different to play the tight end position. And I like those guys too, Jake. And Tyler Warren is one of those guys, without a doubt. Gunnar Helm shows he has some of that ability in him as well.
Yeah, Tyler Warren is going to be up there on the list of tight ends in the NFL soon. I would say all pro, but there's only so many all pros, and there are some really good tight ends in the NFL right now. But he's definitely one that can be up there. With some of these names. I mean, Brock Bowers just led the NFL in receiving yards for all tight ends. It's possible to come in and have that immediate impact,
And he didn't have a quarterback throwing in the ball.
Yeah, there's all this talk of these athletic tight ends coming in. Well, there's only 3 tight ends with over 1,000 yards this year. Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, George Kittle.
Wow.
So it's not, it isn't an extension of wide receiver. And especially with where the NFL game is starting to trend to, you need to run the football well. The NFC is very much a physical. The NFC is very physical much more physical than the AFC as a whole. But even the schemes like the Dolphins, they're moving guys. They're running in creative ways that involves using the tight end as a blocker, whether it be in a motion or lining him up at fullback. And being able to be a complete player is still much more valuable than being an athletic freak when it comes to the tight end position.
All right. Well, Jake, that's going to do it for our tight end talk. And we will probably revisit this list at some point in time. But next Saturday, we will have another position that we will break down for you. We've gone offense, defense, offense. We've gone running back, linebacker, and tight end. If you want to watch any of those previous videos, please check out the channel and go find them. They're on Saturdays. And we've done running backs and linebackers, now tight ends. We will probably move back to the defense side of the ball. We will discuss that off air of what we want to do. Maybe corner, maybe edge rusher, maybe defensive tackle. We don't know yet, but we will come to a conclusion and let you know next week. So you can mark your calendar for the next top 10 as we approach the NFL draft end of April. For Jake Jimerson, I'm Tanner Carlson. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and you can get updates on everything that we are doing 5 days a week. We drop these episodes Tuesday through Saturday at noon. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, this has been your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns on All In Horns. Hook 'em.
All In Sports Network. We love sports.